So, Rahu in the third house, Ketu in the ninth house brings together the axis of beliefs and self-will. Ketu in the ninth house shows a being who is very conditioned and very comfortable with living a life according to their beliefs. They understand the bigger picture. They understand and they believe usually in something very easily. Very sort of faith-inspired. Doesn't mean it's a good belief system. It might be something like, terrorism or something, or white supremacy, or they might believe this, but they have a strong tendency, at least, to understand that there's a bigger picture and that we need to believe in something. They just understand that, but they're not gravitating toward that in this lifetime. They're more obsessed with testing those beliefs, testing and trying new ways to understand the world based on their own ideas and their own self-will and courage. The third house has to do with things that we can't, things that we can measure and battles that we can win based on our own intelligence and our own skills. The ninth house represents those things that we can't figure out on our own, where we need to believe in a higher picture. Ninth house is religion, truly, and believing in something, and the third house is doing it myself. I can figure it out myself, I can do it myself. So the third house is really the main house of ego, the individual ego and individual identity. The first house is actually the dharmic quality of identity. Your physical body and the wisdom of the body, the wisdom of your experience and how that teaches you. But the third house is the idea that I'm going to do it for myself and I'm going to get it because I want it. And it's literally the house of self-will and the house of ego. Ego meaning that separate self that's trying to survive. And again, that separate self that's trying to survive is exactly opposite that ninth house that believes that there's more to life than just trying to survive. And in fact, understands that bigger picture. However, these beliefs don't make sense to us unless the third house of ideas comes in and understands it on our own terms. So you'll see that Rahu in the third house and the person is trying to understand how their beliefs work. As I said, with Ketu, this is where we tend to start in life. So the person has started, let's say they came from a family where there was a strong belief system, or maybe there wasn't, and they just naturally, because no one was spiritual or religious, they became spiritual or religious. They just understand that that's important. Many times they were maybe told to believe things that they didn't believe. So they're conditioned with the need to believe, but instead, they're always testing the beliefs and saying, yeah, but that doesn't make sense, that doesn't make sense. So they wind up trying to figure out how beliefs work, trying to figure out how to unite this blind belief, blind faith, with method, with practice, with language, with being able to understand how the things we believe actually work. Because if we don't understand what we believe in, it's just blind dogma, it's just religion. But once we bring faith in accordance and in alignment with will and intelligence, that becomes spiritual. Then we understand that the beliefs are actually just a way to keep us on the spiritual path, which is about techniques. So Rahu in the third house, and the person can be quite egotistical. They'll fight a lot of battles. They'll be convinced that they're right. They might argue with people a lot because they are quite willful in wanting to be convinced. They're not going to just believe something. If you say, oh, just believe me, no. Rahu in the third will say, well, I'm not going to just believe you. If you're going to say something, you have to explain it. I have to understand it, and until I understand it, I'm not going to let it go. So again, Rahu is obsessed over understanding how things work. So one of the things about a person with Rahu in the third house, don't tell them, oh, just trust me, just believe me. No, they're not going to. They're going to want to say, well, no, you have to explain what you mean. And they'll be very intelligent because Rahu in the third will get them searching for how things work, not just believing in it. But of course, they'll be very intelligent. That sounds like a compliment. It just means that they'll develop their intellect, but it can be a trap like anything else because intelligence, there's a lot of illusion around intelligence as well. This illusion of wisdom, because we've gathered a lot of information. That's not necessarily wisdom. Again, information aligned with purpose is true power. All of these are extremes. So if we're just extreme and we just focus everything on ideas and we forget the bigger picture, then it's not any more wise than just believing blindly with no method or no integration through our own intelligence. So again, Rahu 3rd, Ketu 9, obsessed over personal will, personal strength, figuring things out for ourselves, and not just taking things on faith.